Okay, go ahead and get started here today. I'm Bonnie Postwaite, Dean of the Emeritus College, and I'm happy to present today Brigadier General Bryan W. Wampler. He is U.S. Army retired, currently serves as the Executive Director of the Frontier Museum of the U.S. Army Foundation. That's a mouthful. He retired with more than 32 years of service in September of 2015. He began his Army career by enlisting in a combat as a combat engineer in the Kansas Army National Guard. He was commissioned through the Reserve Officer Training Corps at Emporia State, and his career includes 3 deployments in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom and Operation Enduring Freedom. He has received a bachelor's Bachelor of Science in Geography from Emporia State, a Bachelor of Science in Liberal Arts from the University of the State of New York, a Master of Science in Management from Baker University, and a Master of Strategic Studies from the United States Army War College. I'm worn out just reading it. So he's going to talk to us today about the proper cleaning of headstones and markers, and promises that it will be quite intriguing. So let's learn.
So I'm promising that it's quite intriguing?
Yeah, you did.
Okay. Well, so last year when I came, it was really, I was interested the number of comments people made about their parents, the things their parents did, which made me think about the proper cleaning, proper care and cleaning of headstones and markers. Because most of our parents have passed, and I think most people like going to cemeteries. Now, growing up, every year we'd go to the family cemetery, or actually family cemeteries, and visit the headstones, you know, clean them up, or clean up the surroundings, put flowers, talk about our ancestors, and then go home. And it's interesting, I've since found photos of my father when he was a youngster. He did the same thing, and I have photos with our children doing the same thing. In fact, you'll see, I think one of our daughters in here, and I'll talk about that when we get there. But I was very intrigued, so I thought I would share this. So I'm also in the Sons of the American Revolution. I'm a national trustee. I'm the immediate past Kansas Society president, Sons of the American Revolution. So when you see compatriot Wampler in here, because I didn't catch it before I brought it, that's what that's referring to. Now, I got started in this, so I was the Eastern Assistant Vice President for the Kansas Society of the Sons of the American Revolution. I went to a chapter down in Fort Scott, and a gentleman was doing a quick presentation on cleaning headstones. And it was intriguing to me, so I started, and then I got really into it. So, kind of started, or I did start, so I knew that I had a second great-grandfather somewhere in Lynn County, Kansas. So I started searching, and I found the cemetery, so I went, and I was looking everywhere. And I walked up to this headstone, which was far worse than this. I wish I would have taken a photo of it. And I looked down, and I said, well, who is that? Because you couldn't see the growth. It was worse than that. And I looked closer, there's my second great-grandfather. So you can kind of see, you can see the difference between then and when I took that photo.
That's amazing.
So what I'm here today is just to talk about the different things you can do in cleaning headstones and markers. So I'll cover the do's and don'ts, and I'm going to start out, there are some, I guess, disqualifiers I need to put out there that we all have on anything we do anymore. But we'll just talk about cleaning and how it can be manual labor, or you can just spray, leave, and come back later and see it. I always suggest that you do a little bit of cleaning if you're able. If not, I'm going to show you techniques where you can just spray it and come back later, and it'll still help take care of the biologics or just the normal dirt and grime from life, depending on where you're at. So I always do some disclaimers. So this headstone is actually supposed to be a flat headstone. So it's been mounted in concrete, and the reason I point this out is it has like that much in the concrete, and we're just fortunate it hasn't been knocked over, pushed over. So some of the different things, and then I like pointing this one out because you can see that it's a cut stone, and they've mounted it in concrete. And that was probably done in the early 1900s sometime. eventually that concrete is going to continue to cure and it will snap that headstone off. So there's just different things, and you'll see some, we'll talk about that later on as well. And I hope this will be participative. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to speak up and ask questions. So everything I do, I actually did some additional training through the National Cemetery Administration, and they love starting everything that most headstones can be cleaned with water, which is absolutely true, but a lot of them can't, especially around here. And if there's a cemetery that has one tree, you're going to have biologics on it growing, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But they have specific guidelines, and I always use those, and I stay out of trouble. I also use their guidelines as far as the cleaning solutions. Like wet and forget, you can spray it and leave it on. D2, originally it was one that you would have to scrub, clean, and wash it off. Now D2 says you can leave it on, but there's still some conflicting opinions on that. So when I train, I always say you need to wash it off until they have it on the container that says you don't have to, but we'll talk about that. Temperature is important, the 40 degrees, although I find the very best time to go is when it's miserable, you know, in the beginning of the fall, when it's kind of misty and just, it's not super cold, but it's not warm, because the biologics, you know, the growths, the lichens, the moss, they kind of bloom, they come out, and it's easier to get them off. But we'll talk about that as well. And I'm going through these. These are just the disclaimers. I think one of the most important ones that we look at is ensure that you follow your medical care provider's advice, because maybe they went away or muted. I also like to point out it's important to reach out to the cemeteries you're working at. The majority of the cemeteries I work at are the ones that have been turned over to counties. They're forgotten cemeteries. And I always reach out to either the cemetery, the city it's in, or the county. And I've never been told no. I will tell you, I was in Marion, Kansas, and I have a great aunt that I found down there, so I stopped. I was en route to, I think, McPherson for an event. So I thought, swing through there. So I was cleaning headstone, and someone came up behind me and, what are you doing? And I didn't hear him come up, which is unusual. And I kind of, you know, I didn't jump up, but I felt like I jumped up. Well, it was a county sheriff. What are you doing here? You can't be here. And I explained and went through that. Before I left, he said, my grandparents are over here. Would you mind doing their headstones? Which I did gladly. But typically, it's important to let people know. It's also important, so military headstones, which you'll see a lot in here, those are property of the United States government. But it's still important to talk to the cemetery, the families, as such. So let's see if there are any specifics I need to. Last one, and we'll talk about this later. Never use construction material, and we'll talk about that. Never use a power washer. And I'll show you some examples of what happens to headstones using a power washer. Almost said next slide, but that's me. So, all right, different types of headstones and markers. So the three that are safe to treat: marble, granite, and bronze. We've all seen those. All these others you can clean anything, but I suggest that you stay away from those. Slate, self-explanatory, I think. Now slate is coming back, especially down in the southeastern part of the United States and some in Arizona. But you have to be real careful because slate, the layers, and water gets in there, and anything you do to it, you're going to put more moisture or something into those. Yeah. No. And so it's best to leave them alone. I have extracted a slate and sent it off to have it professionally done, and it's still not back, and that's been 2 years. So the family's doing that. I've just helped them. So any questions on the different materials? I'm going to show you one with wood. I have done a wood. So, and there's going to be a quiz here in a little bit. Yeah. So pay attention.
I see the word coating.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way, in the case of a slate, or iron is obviously one that will keep on oxidizing unless you have a coating, to do something to preserved, because sometimes it's metal with stone, and then you get the combination of the two.
Right, and then you have to worry about the back. So there are coatings, and that's why we sent that slate off. And I've also sent off iron and steel. And they have to go to a kiln, and they dry them, and they do coat them. And the steel, it's not an epoxy. So the stone, it's typically an epoxy. And the steel, it's more of a, oh darn it. They spray it on, and then they electrify it. And
Powder coating?
powder coating, thank you. It's a powder, thank you.
And the reason it needs to be cleaned first, otherwise the oxidation is under the coating and you get the problems.
Right, cleaned, dried, sealed, and then coated, so yeah. And there are very few places that do it in the United States. And then you were talking about where you have two different things. So you can have a natural stone and let's say a plaque. Like I worked with an organization in Nebraska where we took the plaque off, and the only place we could find it that refurbished that type of bronze plaque was in New England. So it worked out really well. And oftentimes they're taking those off and they're leaving those on, and they'll leave the big, because usually they're on a nice stone and they'll mount them in concrete in the ground and such. But good question. Any others so far? So here's some examples, and I'll go through all these. So granite, when you look at it, typically you'll see little squares, and if you look real closely, you can see it up in the upper left-hand one in the rock. Just little squares. You'll see dark and light. And then marble is just like me, the marbling. And you can see these two, and it typically comes from water passing through rock and catches it. So it's like onyx. Everybody typically thinks onyx, black onyx. Well, onyx is actually more of a white, and it picks up the color of the water going through, and it can be beautiful. And I'll point out here, so this is a marble from southeastern United States. And the marble to the right is from the northeastern. And the only reason I know that is because the geologist that who's a family member, provided these photos to me for this, and he mentioned that to me. So there's a slate, and like I said, slate's making a reoccurrence, mainly in Georgia, it looks like, but it is coming back, and it's like you pointed out, layers upon layers, and then sandstone. The sandstone crypt up there is in our family cemetery in Walnut, Kansas, and that has terrified me since I was 3 years old. But there aren't that many sandstone, and that's a regional rock from Kansas. And sandstone is just compressed sand, as you know, was underneath the ocean, and it's best just to leave it alone. And then limestone, which is also very soft. And then fieldstones. The only true fieldstone here is this one right here. And a fieldstone is just a rock. And you'll see a lot of it from the 1800s of folks coming west. And you'll see these cemeteries, usually just a plot. And oftentimes they're in a corner of a section or by a road. But my second great grandfather, who we started with, that cemetery had a large number of fieldstones and markers. So this one, and this one, and this one, this is what they would put after they buried somebody, because back in the 1800s, it took quite a bit of time in order to have the headstone made. Sometimes the headstone was never made, but you'll see these. In that cemetery, there was a tornado, so they were cleaning up the cemetery, and they found all these rocks and they threw them over into the field next. And I was there, they asked if I'd come help them with it, and I said, sure. And we were just fortunate. There's a book called The Cemeteries of Lynn County, Kansas. There's some great documents out there. Some aren't published, they're just out there at the historical societies. But we found that, and from the descriptions of the rocks, the fieldstones, we've been able to relocate those. We haven't found my second great grandmother's yet, so I've ordered one that I'm going to place out there until we find it. Hopefully someday they'll find it out in the field that a tornado launched it. And I hope we've all heard the stories where they relocate cemeteries and you'll find headstones. You've heard about Arlington where they took headstones and did things with that. So there's different things. Iron headstones. And then wood. This is the only real wood, and it's a marker. And I was there at the cemetery, and the family, they asked me, do you have any idea what this says? I said, no, but if you're a family member and authorize me, I'll clean it for you and clean it. They have since taken it and they're preserving it. But apparently the husband paid that. The wife died first. He put that up, so the family has that. I also cleaned the birdhouse. The birdhouse is still there. I should probably take a photo of the birdhouse. And then the bronze. So the only real bronze one there is in the bottom. I went ahead and included the one on the top and the brass. So you've probably seen the little trophies you can get, and you'll see them on fireplaces. Oftentimes families, that was all their means would allow them to do. So they put it in concrete. So it's interesting the different things that you'll find as a marker. Sir?
You say the sandstone you typically don't do anything.
Yes.
Now I've seen Paris when it was still black.
Mm-hmm.
Paris is sandstone buildings,
Mm-hmm.
and they're now bright and clean.
That's true.
So there are options.
So and with a marker and a large stone, it's the give and take that you're able to do. Because the cleaning in Paris, which is a good example, or in New York or Chicago, they're able and willing to give up a layer.
Oh, okay.
A layer of the stone. On these, now the outer could probably take it, but is it worth it? And that's really up to the family or the for this one, that's a county maintains that. And what's interesting, all the counties that I've dealt with, the most that they give or budget for cemeteries around $1,500 to $3,000. And most, like one of our family cemeteries is Walnut, Kansas. There's a ladies' auxiliary that does that. And one mowing is $550. And I will say, I appreciate the mowing companies that take care of the cemeteries, but some of the most severe damage is done by mowers or weed whackers as I call them, power washers, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. So, all right. Does anybody have any questions about headstones or the materials? All right, good. We're ready for a quiz. So, what type of material is this? And I hope can you see if there are any questions online? Or the folks online, if you want to go ahead and just answer.
They should speak up.
Yeah,
Okay. Good. Does anybody want to?
they have to unmute themselves.
Yeah.
What kind of rock or stone is this?
I think it's marble or granite.
Oh,
No,
Looks
sorry.
like limestone.
okay. So this is a government issued headstone, so we know it's either marble or granite. So, and you're right, it does look like limestone. So, any other guesses? Marble. And I'll go back. You look at it.
It's amazing.
Yeah, you can't tell. And this is just one cleaning.
That's
Cleaned it,
incredible.
came back. So, and we had some questions. So, Sergeant Israel Markham, Company L, 7th Illinois Light Cavalry, Civil War.
It's so gorgeous.
It is. Oh, it's beautiful. Now, what's really sad is it's in concrete, and that's going to snap. And people will ask me, well, can you go in and cut it out? You can, but you're going to damage. It's like when I reset headstones, I use a 2x4 wood around that. I don't use a compactor, big heavy one. You don't want to damage. There's a gentleman that also does training. Do no harm. So, sir.
When you say they'll snap, what type of time frame? 50 years? 100 years? 200 years?
Could be. Oh, where's our civil engineer? Oh, there she is back there. Well, she's water though, but well, she can talk about the effects of water and moisture on these. But yeah, it just concrete continues to harden. So, and I think I have some photos in here. It depends.
So is it the concrete hardening that causes
Yeah,
it to
yeah,
snap?
yep, and contracts, or not contracts. It expands, continues to harden and expand against the softer rock. Okay, second question. This one's a little bit easier. Any guesses? Remember, marble or granite?
Could be marble. I mean, the whiteness of it
No,
looks,
no.
no?
I think it's granite.
Any others? And you think it's granite because you can see some squares. And you probably think it's marble because you can see some lines, which are
Yeah,
both great
just
guesses.
some color,
It is marble, though. Now, this is still biologic. I need to go back and look, see if that's gone. But you look at that, it's impossible to tell either one of them. It's trick questions. And I'm sure no professors in here or retired professors ever had trick questions. But, so cleaning solutions. So like I said, National Cemetery Administration will say most headstones can be cleaned with water. Totally agree, and I'll show you some examples. But once you have biology, so I think cemeteries should be on the top of a hill, absolutely no trees, so the sun can bake and kill all the grass. But most cemeteries are, soothing and trees, which are the worst thing for rock sitting there. But so we're going to talk about these different solutions. So wet and forget it's my go-to because majority of the cemeteries I go to don't have a water source. I have to bring it. D2 is great if you want instant gratification, and I use it when there's a water source. And I just put these, and I need to double check the prices. Home Depot still sells the wet and forget concentrate, and I always suggest going with the concentrate. And don't use the sprayer that goes on nozzle. It's just more economical to do it this way. And then Velpex, and I hope I'm saying that correctly. I've never heard anybody say it other than that. It's for museum type work. So, and I have done some stuff at some museums, some historical society. And when I do this, I use a soft toothbrush. Like that, and very careful. I use distilled water that I bring. So, and distilled water is still $1 a gallon at the local grocery stores. Orvis is, and you'll see that in a little bit. So the National Cemetery Administration will say you can use ivory dishwashing soap. Orvis is the same type of material, but Orvis doesn't bubble up like the ivory does. Where the ivory is it's so many bubbles, and it really doesn't seem to clean as well. So I use that. So, any questions on cleaning solutions?
You dilute these?
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
according to what's on the containers.
Should you wear gloves or?
Yes, so we're going to talk about that. That's
Okay.
a great question. In fact, that might be. Well, we're going to get to your gear, your kit, and mask, because we're going to talk about biologics for cleaning ears. Do we have any biologists?
Oh, yes.
Oh, there we go. So, what I've tried to do here, I've done here, is taking photos or presenting photos when most of us will see the headstones in the summer, because things look different. So moss, even here is usually everybody thinks moss is really green. Typically, when you see it, it's not. It's dormant. So first one, lichens. So the lichens are right down here. You can see the little circles, I hope. And this is in Massachusetts. This is Lowell, Massachusetts. And this is my grandparents and great-grandparents. And there's some interesting stuff, and you can see some of my traveling kit stuff right back there that you'll see here in a little bit. I usually don't carry the small sprayer like that. But in Massachusetts or on the coast, you have the capillary action of sea salt, or salt in the air. And you can see where I'm pointing to, you have that effect. You can also see kind of a square line. You see that rectangular line, the edges? So the way they carve in names and years, especially the death year, is they'll come with a sandblaster, they'll put the tin plate over it, and they'll just blast it. And if you ever see a sandblasting trailer in a cemetery, that's what they're doing. So you can see the damage, and you can see all that light spots. That's from sand, and it's also from the salt, and the capillary reaction of the salt going in, drying, expanding, causing damage. Now, the way to overcome this is you can hire headstone companies, some, and they'll come out and they'll polish it. They have the industrial polishers, portable industrial polishers. If you ever go to a headstone factory, and I encourage you if you can, it's really interesting to watch them. They will polish the stone, and it's basically they're sanding it with different grits of sandpaper.
Do you ever use like Ryobi polishes that you use for the cars?
I don't because, and I'll talk about it here in a little bit. The only brushes that I use are brushes I will use in the car, so it's soft. And the circular, you're putting a circular pattern, and I try to follow the pattern of the stone. So, you will see something, but you also see people that still use power washers, and I'll show you how it damages it. So, lichens, you have algae, moss, which we have, which we see, and then the black organic discoloration, which is also known as, anybody?
Mold?
Yeah, black mold. So that's why I encourage you, wear a mask. And people argue with me about wearing a mask, and you just think about what you're cleaning off biologics. Stuff that's been there for a long time, and you just don't know. Better safe than sorry. And in fact, I've got a little plastic mask now that has inserts, because I would just wear the normal, like yours, the 95s, and if in the summer I sweat and it clogs them up, where the plastic just makes it a little bit easier. I will eventually go to the ones that have the filters off to the side once I run out of the inserts that just cover my face and you put them in. Any questions on the organic growth? And that's what we're really fighting, organic growth. So the kits. So, and I'll show you a picture of my kit. And here are the different things. So I'll start down at the bottom. It's really important. Make sure you have a pattern, because I can't tell you how many times I've left stuff behind. And it took me forever to find it. So I started doing patterns, and I could just go back and find my different kits. But everybody says, well, I have a camera on my phone. The only problem is most of these cemeteries don't have cell coverage because they're out in the middle of nowhere, and your battery goes dead. So I've started carrying one of my old cameras to take photos, and it's important to take before and after. Earbuds are great, although just be prepared for a county deputy to come up and scare you. Hand trimmers, and this is my set that I use. I also have the manual, but I suggest that you stay away from anything electric, especially the weed whips, because you'll do damage. Trowels, some type of saw, because there will be limbs such. In fact, sometimes will take a chainsaw where the limbs come down and clear things out. Things to clean your shoes, because you're out. A lot of these cemeteries, the local cemeteries aren't too bad. Some are. So, and things to clean up with when you get done. Wasp spray, and we'll talk about animals and critters that call the cemeteries home, and they're not friendly. So, waterproof gloves. I like the ones that have the rubber and the nylon, but I also wear the mechanic type gloves underneath, because those are waterproof. Just be ready in the summer. They're going to sweat. There's going to be water in there. In the winter, I have a pair of Milwaukee work gloves like that, but they're insulated. So, knee pads, I actually started out with those. I've gone through too many of those, and I get the ones that have the padding on the inside and the hard shell on the outside. So, seasonal clothing. And we'll talk about some of the other stuff. Eye protection, because when you're going, that stuff's fine. It's kind of like your mask. You also want to protect your eyes. If you wear glasses, you could. I'll make sure you I carry those little cleaning packets, lens cleaners. in my car. So sprayers for your wet and forget or D2. We already talked about brushes, soft bristles. If you're willing to use it in your car, it's good for a headstone. Now people say it's rock, but rock differs in hardness. Any questions about anything up there?
Why the fiberglass rod?
Thanks for bringing that up. Oftentimes, you know there's a headstone there. And I think I have one I can show you. But it's not there. Sometimes it's been pushed over, fallen over, and there's dirt over the top. So you take the fiberglass and you find it's kind of like searching for a mine. There are any veterans, you know. So, and my daughter, or youngest daughter, found one that was buried over time. So, thanks for asking that. Any other questions?
God, you've really got to, you don't take all of that at one time, do you?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Good gracious.
Now I don't always have the hose because if I know there's not a source, and I've also switched from that nozzle. I just like the little squeeze ones. So, and you'll see the 5 gallons about here. So here's my kit. So the one on the left, you see there's water, and I usually take 2 of the 5 gallons, and then I also have the water over there to the right, and I fill each individual bottle, and the lids I drilled holes in it so I can just spray it out. So I fill the bottles, put them in there, fill the container with water, just have some more water, because you can never have enough. But this is what it kind of looks like. Make sure once you're done, clean it and let it dry. If you don't, you're gonna have a very strange aroma in your garage or wherever you store it. So, and things will start growing because you're cleaning biologics. So, but this is my kit. I've replaced some things, some are the same, and you can see. So that's actually a cemetery. I like the brushes that I can put over the lip of the 5 gallon container, and I can also keep track of it. Something I have since purchased, I haven't put it on yet, is one of those cloth rings. I got it for, I think it's a car wash. You can stick brushes and things in on the outside. I have a bunch of them for tools. And I thought, hey, finally found it. And my wife wouldn't let me have hers off her gardening bucket. So that's my kit.
One question.
Sir.
You say for emergencies, eye flush.
Yes.
You don't wear glasses?
Well, I do, but you can still go in and around.
Okay.
Yeah. So unless you have the goggles, and you know, there are times where I just need to get going.
And all of them have side shields.
I wear, mine are the wrapped sunglasses,
All the wrapped.
but still. So, but thanks for asking about the eye flush. Yeah, I always have one new bottle, and I like the smart bottles, but you can also get it at Costco, the Costco brand, which is cheaper. So the steps I use when using wet and forget. So I always come up, and typically I have some research on the headstones now, but come to it, address, and it may sound weird. I always say hi to the person's name, like I'm talking to them. And I probably shouldn't admit to this, but when you're doing this, you'll walk by a headstone that it's almost calling out to you. And so I just stop and do the headstone. And it's, whether it's a spirit or if it's just me or whatever it is, but I hope that you all will do this and see if it happens to you as well. But so you go up to the headstone, you'll see me with my snippers, the larger ones, clearing out some flowers that I'm sure one of my relatives planted that I've been trying to kill. And the long shoots, the green shoots that have a flower that comes up once a year. And
The lazy Susans or
I don't
black
think-
eye Susans or
kind of like that, but not quite. And I've been trying to kill them forever, and they just keep coming back. So clean up around them. Typically, and if there's a base, if there's concrete and it's sipping on top, I'll uncover the concrete, get the dirt off. It'll come back, but get it off, clean it up, all manually. And then I'll go ahead and take a soft scraper, and I always use a plastic scraper, one that you can push in with your fingernail and you kind of dent it. And I'm sure you've seen them painting scrapers. And I really like the ones that have the little finger that's off the side that you can get into the crevices. But I'll just scrape it off, get the loose stuff. Brush the residual, and that's why I have a broom. And mine's a broom, a little hand broom that we've all seen typically in grade schools, when we're in grade school. And then I'll spray the headstone from bottom up. That's because wet and forget calls for that. Just bottom up, front, side, back, side, and then the top. Now, if you're picking out your headstone, I would suggest, the rough edges? Stay away from that, because that gives those biologics something to grab onto. And those are always the worst. So everything that's smooth and polished, it's more protective. Then I scrub, take the brushes, and you'll see this is our oldest daughter, Grace, who's a fundraiser. She followed my wife, and she works at Pembroke now. And she didn't like what I was doing, the detail I was doing on, this is Uncle Billy, who you'll meet here in a bit. So she said, Dad, get out of the way. And she jumped in there. It's addictive. So she did that. And then at the end, after I've scrubbed, I go back and spray it again. Gives wet and forget the opportunity. And you saw in that first disclaimer slide, you need to have 4 hours before it rains for wet and forget to really soak in there and, to kill the biologics. So, any questions on the steps that I use? So here's some examples, and these are all relatives of mine. And I've talked about the power washer, the damage. So if you look down here, that was power washed sometime in history. And you can see the lines, like especially right here, from a power washer. And here you can see the lines, and that water just gets in there. And this is limestone, which is softer, but still, even the harder rock, those power washers, and the DeWalt's and they're the gas ones, which you need a gas one out here in a water source. They're very effective, but they're also very destructive, the headstone. So I always ask people not to do them. And then the one in the upper right-hand corner, this is in sequence. So that's what the headstone looked like when I got there. That's right after I finished scrubbing it. And then the last one is I sprayed it down again. And if you look down at the bottom, you can see the biologic and the growth just sitting on top. So, and then just more headstones. So the one in the lower right-hand corner is also limestone. And I think that concrete base was actually installed when she passed away, or when they put the headstone up. Just the way it looks, but don't know. Worried it's going to eventually snap as well. But that's wet and forget. So research, I briefly mentioned that. So it's fascinating what you'll learn about people at the different cemeteries. And this is in Walnut, Kansas. And Uncle Billy, this was headstone, so African American, in the local cemetery with a Loomis, which unusual for the time. But then I started researching him to see who he was. So Uncle Billy was a slate. He was at John Brown's hanging. So interesting. And then during the Civil War, Colonel Loomis, who later settled in Walnut, Kansas, came through with his regiment, hired him as his cook, and then Uncle Billy worked for his family until he passed away and became part of the family. So he's in the Loomis corner of the cemetery, right when you drive into the cemetery in Walnut, Kansas. So just fascinating. And Ancestry.com is wonderful, but there's a cost to it. These others are free. Newspaper.com is not, but great information. And if you go to a cemetery and you can't find something, either Missouri or Kansas, you can reach out to the Missouri or Kansas Historical Society and say, I'm trying to find something here.
Well, I call myself a cemetery tourist. I've been all over the world. I was just in San Pedro Cemetery, Medici, Colombia. I use Find a Grave.
Yep.
And I find it very helpful. Maybe it's not as good, maybe it's like Wikipedia, but, you know, when I go to cemeteries, I go because I've got a list of people that are famous, but then I just like to walk around.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see, like the one I saw in Buffalo, I told him I was sick. It's a very famous one. You know, that's what's on her tombstone.
Yep.
But you find fascinating epitaphs, interesting sculptures,
Yeah.
and I love it. And then I'll get home and do research and find out, my God, this person did this or this person did that. So I find cemeteries
Yeah, they're
the most
fascinating.
fascinating place in the world. I mean, my stone is up in Calvary. My girlfriend's buried across in the Jewish cemetery, so I told her we'd be together. So Penny's there,
With a little bit of
she's
separation.
waiting for me, but I'm in no hurry, Penny. But it is fascinating. I chose my spot because I said I want to be buried, and you can appreciate this, Felicia, near Jean Eagles, she's an actress from Kansas City, who was the first Miss Sadie Robbins, Miss Sadie Thompson in the 20s. So I'm buried near her.
Yeah. I think
Will be.
Yeah.
In fact, Pendergast is right over here.
I think it was 1993. I was in Manhattan Cemetery, and just walking around, and there's a headstone that, as you are, I once was, as I am, you will someday be. So
Yeah, there are
the
great
same.
things
Yeah,
like
and
that.
I finally the family member I showed you with the power washer, I was able to find a very old photo, and with AI's assistance, we finally deciphered, and I added that to Find a Grave. So just
Yeah, I
more,
said
yeah,
to find a grave, and after 1 or 2 years, because they do 80 million.
or more, yeah.
Or more. And I got a thing saying, we have correct, because I was looking for a grave in Greenwood in Brooklyn, and they had it on the wrong side.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and then looked on the other side of the entrance, and there she was, famous opera singer. So I wrote him and said, she's not in that section, she's in this
Mhm.
section. And they wrote me back eventually.
Yeah.
Said, we've corrected it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, they talk about it being like Wikipedia, but there are some people on there that if you have some information, they'll, why is that there? I manage thousands of headstones, so I get quite a few inquiries and suggestions. And we know that we have one ancestor that's buried underneath a road, and the person who manages it insists that person's in a different cemetery. But we're trying to work through that. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right, and that's why it's the research. And you're all researchers, being educators.
Well, the research is great fun,
It is.
because you find out things, for God's sakes, I didn't, you know.
It is. But like Uncle Billy, and then I'll show you another one. So this is the family cemetery in Walnut that I've been talking about. So for years I wondered what was John's relationship to William, and they finally updated the Medal of Honor website through the Department of Defense, Department of War, Defense at the time, and it was the same person. Now I'm still trying to figure out, did he enlist using a brother's name or something, and the age? Why did he have two different names? But they're the same person recognized, so it's just interesting things. And the government issued headstone, the Daughters of the American Revolution, requested and had been placed. And I don't think they knew that they were the same person at the time. But it's to your point, it's fascinating to learn more about people.
Mhm.
So
So if you're into that, if you go to the cemeteries in Paris, they have basically almost books full of information about all the various big mausoleums
Yep.
that are there.
Yeah, and I've been to every cemetery in Paris.
we went to a few this last summer. Didn't go to all of them.
Of the ones that need to be visited.
Yep.
And then sometimes I just walk into.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Finding the one where the Marquis de Lafayette's buried was fascinating.
It's interesting. So my wife's family came from Germany, so we visit theirs. It's interesting how the families have to continue to pay to keep their plots.
Yes.
And yeah, and then you'll see they're all buried in the same place. So
All my grandparents are no longer buried because after 30 years, you can rent the spot
Right.
for 30 years.
That's right.
And
you have to
then
pay.
after that, it's cleaned because they need space for new bodies.
That's right.
And so you get a house on the cemetery in where the bones are stacked, ossuariums,
Mhm.
and then they're not identified anymore.
Or the cremated remains.
Or they
Yeah,
are cremated. Yeah.
Yeah, because I've been to, with the final grave says it is in section 20, it is grade 135, and I've gone, and I know them at the exact one, and it's not there.
Right.
And it's probably what you're talking about, that it's, oh, this is a famous person who didn't
Yeah.
show up.
Yeah, and cemeteries are really good if you provide them the information that if they're still active, they'll update.
But have you ever gone to the caves under Paris? The ossuaria, there's massive amounts of skulls and long bones and hands, and really, that's how, if you, especially after a period of the pest or something like that,
Yes, yes.
when there are multiple deaths, it's mass graves and they're cleaned up and the bones are put in ossuaria.
And it's interesting in like Louisiana, the really hot climates, how their cemeteries work.
Yeah.
And yeah, above ground.
Above ground.
So, and then we all heard about the floods and things that happen. But yeah, research it's just amazing.
How much, if you look in this area, and I'm not that familiar with most cemeteries here, since I don't have family here yet, in the cemeteries, that they have mausolea rather than headstones.
So headstones are predominant, and then there's some cemeteries where you have to have a flat headstone versus an upright
I hate
versus
flat
mausoleum. But most of them have different sections, and then it's just really dependent upon the cemeteries, and they're all. And then there's also individual beliefs about cremation. It's very interesting how many people don't want to leave a footprint at all. So you'll see find a grave, and I have managed several to where no grave. It gives the
there are no
information.
graves.
Yeah.
They decided either they were. I'm big on movie stars, and there are a lot of I'll go look and they don't have a marker. Sometimes that's deliberate, but sometimes it's because they died and they were forgotten.
Yeah.
And nobody. And you'll find I get notices that so and so now has a marker, like the woman who. She was in the glass menagerie. She was come on, Felicia. She was the very famous one. Did the first glass menagerie. That's okay, I'll talk to you. But she finally got a marker, and her husband was an actor.
So you filled the quiz.
So I'm glad you brought that up. That's
The
use
movie
that as
star,
this.
the movie star that was in Glass
Laurette
Menagerie.
Taylor. Laurette Taylor.
Laurette Taylor.
So if you have a ancestor who's a veteran, and you don't know where they're buried or if they're buried, you can do a memorial headstone. In fact, in southeastern Kansas, Randy Colby had a Revolutionary War patriot and a War of 1812 patriot memorial headstones put in their cemetery. And you just do the paperwork through the Veterans Administration. And it's almost the same process of requesting a replacement headstone for a veteran, and you can do that. Or you can do that on your own. You buy a plot, do the headstone. I just suggest that you put memorial, so they know that they're not buried there, but it's remembering folks.
Yeah,
But
I mean-
yeah, cemetery it's individual choice. A lot of people do it based upon religion, because and I think there's still some debate about the new water cremation versus ashes to ashes, dust to dust versus
For
water.
biological digestion.
Yeah.
That's one of the options.
Yeah,
now.
and the only cemetery that I know of regionally is in Lawrence that will allow the just the natural burial, no embalming, just wood and buried. So
which is very, if from European perspectives, embalming is something weird.
Yeah, yep.
You're
We're,
put in a casket or wrapped in a linen
mhm.
and put in the ground.
But history, it's really neat to track down different ones. So let's talk about the residents of the cemetery.
Oh my God.
I have seen people try to go up to a feral cat and pet a feral cat and just be attacked. And we had to, it took, I think, 3 of us to get the cat off the lady. So now, these are just all off the web, but some examples. So if there's a hole in the cemetery, there's something in it. Or there has been, or there will be. So just leave it alone. I have personally seen a copperhead, a water moccasin, and mainly diamondbacks. I've also seen some redneck garden snakes, which are great. They'll take care of the rats. Seen rats. I've seen, so down in Georgia, those fire ants, and I get chills every time I even talk about it. Been bitten by those. So critters. The birds, there's a hawk, Girard, and there's also one in Pleasanton, Kansas, that will dive bomb guests. It's almost like sport for them. I've seen that. So any animal that's there, stay away from. So, and most of you probably figured that, but and you have to be careful.
They're probably spirits.
Could be.
Very nice.
Yeah, occupying the animal.
There are
There
a
you
lot
go.
of geese in cemeteries now.
They're mad.
Oh, yeah, and there's always the dominant goose that's going to come after you. So,
What is on the lower right? What is that little creature?
oh, it's a little groundhog
Oh,
type. So you'll see those in really in Colorado. Seen a lot out there. Not that species. Ducks, but they're cute to stay away from. And it's deer. So especially in rut, you know, the mills. And I have seen a car. Estes Park, where a male elk went after a car in a cemetery. So, I talked about caution. So first, when we're cleaning headstones, you come up to them, you dress them, you have to get down on your knees, hence the knee pads. So it's very important not to use the headstone as an arm, because they'll pop, they'll push over, and you know, I've been meaning to change that. That headstone I saw pushed over. The gentleman was pushing back to get up, and it went over. It actually weighed out over a ton. We had to put a scaffolding up over it and pull it up. So, they're super heavy. And then construction equipment or anything you can buy from the hardware store, don't use on the headstone. There's certain brands of epoxies that you can use, and it's best just to hire a headstone company to do that for you. Or if you really want to do it, you can get it from them if you know how to use epoxy. But you have to have special equipment because all the rock is incredibly heavy. And it's always surprising. And that one, a couple of guys decided they were going to try to lift it, and they couldn't even budge it. But you think, well, it just took a gentleman to push it over. But and then trees. Do I have that? Yeah, this one right here. I told you about the chainsaw. So limbs, and a lot of these trees are 100 plus years old. So it's pretty substantial limbs. It's really important that you have experience cutting up limbs, because the gentleman that was doing that when we pulled in was going on the branches underneath, and he had it come down on him. So, and we were fortunate. There's a farmer that came over with his bucket, and we were able to take care of it. But, and then if you look, this is actually here in town. Someone took, or not really sure, I think that is the concrete seal that you use in driveways to try to seal it up. The problem with that, once it's cracked or separated, water's in there. So it needs to be to have a path out, and you're just clogging it up. And if you clog it up, it stays. And what happens when it freezes around here, it expands and it breaks it more. So, and you saw that picture of me trimming it out. You can see how green it is. So don't plant plants. I ask people not to put any plants in. And then when something falls, let it be. So, any questions on this? So, chalk. Chalk is fertilizer to biologics. Once you get chalk in rock, you cannot get it out. So, these are examples of people taking chalk so you could see it. And the best way to see it is just take a photo of it. And I will show you, so you see the one in the upper right hand corner, well, you have the photos there. You can see how the biologics just got into that chalk, and it blossoms because it has fertilizer. So please encourage people not to use chalk. You'll see some more people, and these are all ancestors of mine, and I might even have family members who did this. Paint, spray paint, brushed on paint, brushed in paint. So you could see it, which I don't understand. And then rubbings down below. Even though you have the onion skin paper, you're still possibly damaging the stone. So the best way, if you want to really see it, is take a photo, upload it to Find a Grave, or if you want to see what it says, look at Find a Grave at older photos, or contact the local historic society, because this is just a form of damaging the stone. I don't say vandalism because.
But if they're brass, you could do that. On stones, maybe
Well-
not, but brass. In England, they've been doing rubbings on brass gravestones for centuries.
I don't suggest doing it at anything, but if they allow it in England, so
In the churches, the whole
Oh,
floor
yeah.
is
if they sell it,
gravestones.
but yeah, but we're talking mainly stone here. So chalk is terrible. Never power wash. And the only brass headstone or marker that I've seen is that one I showed you at the beginning, but yeah. So here's an example of just water in a scraper. And this was in the fall, pretty miserable, misty out, and I was able to come in. So if you look at the one right up here, you'll see I went from left to right, because in the Army they teach you left to right, always. It's my shoelaces and everything, but so you'll see the pile of it off to the right. It's wet, it's blossoming and opening up, so I was able to take a soft scraper and just scrape it off, and they come into water afterwards. You can see this one, that was the one that they put chalk, and here you can see with the chalk. Because we know from earlier what the chalk looked like. And then it's important, I mentioned that scraper that has a little side thing, it's for the paint lids. That way you can get into the letters and the numbers and clean it up. Here's some more examples. So there's William, so a Medal of Honor recipient. You can see what it looked like when I found it and then afterwards. And then there are times it's pretty startling. Like the lower right one, when I went back, it looked like bleach white. And I need to add that photo. But this, you can see the quick difference. So we'll talk about Orvis and just scrubbing it. I always like asking, here's another quiz. What do you think that is right there? That black mark? It's not mold. It's not black biology.
Just dirt on it.
No? Think
Is
of
that an insignia of some sort?
No, but I can see why you think that. That was from, the zero turn mowers? You know when you get high centered, only one tire spins? One tire was spinning, and he was just going. I said, stop. startled him, and I pushed him off, but he was just spinning. It was rubber, and you can see I couldn't get it all off. So then I also found you know the they're not crypt, they're the concrete. You put the casket in it, and then they have the concrete cover.
Yeah.
I'm often pushing those back to close them up, but that's after I carry a. Have you ever seen those hand pumps? You get it. And now I said don't go to a lumber yard, but I guess you can for this, and I'll pump the water out as best I can, and then push them back to close them.
So sarcophagus.
So yeah, but they're in the ground with the cover. So mowers will hit those, and they're not paying any attention. They're just trying to get their job done. So here's some examples of Orvis. You can just see that I put those on there just to kind of show my scrubbing pattern. It cleans them up. And you can see the biologic on those, and these are all flat. And we talked about replacement. Replacement, you just go on the Veterans Administration. A typical headstone, if it's a family member, you're able to do that with the cemetery. There's just different processes and procedures. Depending where it's at, if it's turned over to the county, they leave it up to whoever wants to do it. It just, I always say don't dispose of any headstone or marker. If you don't want to keep it yourself, contact the local historical societies, things like that. And then how to select a cemetery. Anything works. I would start with family members, loved ones, or it might not even be your own. A good friend of mine who is also in the Sons of American Revolution, Craig Delavue, who happens to be a descendant of the Wampler line, which I thought was ironic. He's had a headstone for about 15 years. So I was kind of shocked to see it and immediately called him and Lenexa. But family members, friends, you can be traveling, trips, just about any. So, and these are just different ones of my family members where I've gone. The upper left hand is actually Canada. Kurtz is in Indiana. Walnut is the one I was talking about. That's just a corner of a field. And farmers are happy to let you go. Typically, you just talk to them, tell them who you are, and you just want to clean up. And if you show up with information about who's there, they're often very interested to know, and sometimes they'll be related. We were actually at the burial of my grandmother, and the burial crew stuck around, and the headstone company and the mortician said, "That's weird. They usually just dig, go, come back." Well, finished, they came up and they said, "Hey, we're kin. We're tailors. Your grandmother was a tailor," so it's just, it's a small world, and it's kind of neat to meet folks. So. Questions? Comments?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So the cement bases that will eventually break
The uprights.
yes, does it break vertically, horizontally? Does it shatter the whole
Yes.
thing?
Well, it typically doesn't shatter the whole thing,
But it will.
but you'll
crack.
see it. So on some of those that you saw back where it was up a little bit,
Yeah.
that might have been caused from tension in the stone. You just don't know the internal structure of it. So, and I've also seen just right at the top
Flat off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
or underneath. It's yeah. Good question.
Thank you for what you're doing, because as one who goes to cemeteries, it's very depressing sometimes.
It is. It is. And I'll give it a shot. If nothing else, you can just break wet and forget, and it'll help. So, other questions? We talked about research, physical part of it. And if you ever talk to Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, or anything like that, you can, when they're looking for projects.
Eagle project.
Yeah, Eagle Project's great. Yeah, mine was, I did a horseshoe. What do we call this? The horseshoe thing at our city park.
Oh, yeah.
And I would have much rather done something like this.
No, but I have noticed that on travel that there are groups of Boy Scouts or so forth who are helping at cemeteries.
Yeah, and they're doing more. So Wreaths Across America. So December 12th of every year they put out wreaths at veterans cemeteries, but also local cemeteries that are sponsored.
I've seen that. Yeah.
Veterans Day, people will put out, the flags, and so people are starting to go back into cemeteries. So, and if any of you remember my last presentation, I always start everything with, look at history. History repeats. Study history, and this is just something that feeds to that, the history of people and contributions made in the community. And it's amazing the things you find. Things that were considered insignificant at the time or unusual are insignificant now. Ma'am?
You didn't address vandalism in cemeteries.
What?
Vandalism.
Vandalism, yes.
So, what happens after a cemetery's been vandalized? Are there crews that come out and try to restore it back?
It really depends on the community. So there's actually quite a bit of vandalism.
Yeah.
So if you go to a cemetery and you see something that looks like vandalism, call the local sheriff's department.
Well,
Figure it out. Yeah.
As I said, I've been to hundreds of cemeteries. And what's very discouraging is like in the older cemeteries where they have photographs of the people, particularly in Jewish cemeteries, the photographs are gone. And people will come and because they want stone or something at their house, they'll come and take parts of headstones or parts of mausoleums.
Yeah, the flower, like my sister's
Oh,
copper flower vase.
Yeah,
was
they'll
sold.
take them and
Yeah.
it's just very discouraging to think that people will be so awful to do that, but they do because they want something for their yard, or if it's a famous something and they want to have it as a
Or resale.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Couples.
Yeah. But if you see vandalism or what it looks like, don't hesitate. Or I'm always calling to report something. Sometimes they already know about it. Sometimes they don't. I like it when they come out and check it out. But it really depends on the cemetery. For an example, Onega, Kansas, this has been a long time. This was late 80s, early 90s. They had that happen, and the community came together and restored, did a lot of the work. I know you'll see the doughboys, that they always have the rifle with the bayonet. People will cut off the bayonet or something like that. So it depends, but you'll see that. All you can really do is report.
Yeah, because a lot of cemeteries are easy to get into. Even I was in Sweden so I could get Greta Garbo, which I did, in Ingrid Bergman, and those are 24-hour cemeteries.
Yeah, the Jersey. We were in France this last summer, end of the summer. Oh, what's the famous artist? No, his gardens.
Oh,
Monet.
Monet.
Yeah, Monet. So
I've been to his. I was there a few years
one of the
ago.
stops was the cemetery, and seen him, and then his girlfriend is. It was just interesting.
Wow.
The stories.
Yeah, he's
So-
down from his house,
Right.
Yeah.
and he's there.
Other questions, comments, experiences?
Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure.
We need to go on a field trip.
I'll do that.
That would be great. I would love that.
That would be fun.
Come up with a time and location. Start pulling together your cleaning kit. And I just use it. My sprayer is just the standard brand. Darn it, it just escapes me. I don't remember. Not the fertilizer,
Brenda
ma'am.
has a question.
Oh, just, when you have a family situation where the deceased has left very specific request of what his tombstone should be, grave should look like, and it broke his mother's heart, she wanted more things on it and so on. How do you deal with situations like that?
Personally, I don't deal with those. I deal with what I can control.
Yeah.
So, I know in our trust, I put some information in there for our daughters and wife, but it's basically for me, since they will outlive me without question, whatever they decide upon. So,
Well,
yeah.
in my case, the deceased mother got away. So,
Yeah.
don't begrudge her that.
Yeah.
I think families have to work that out.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, family dynamics are wonderful. Yeah. But one thing is, if there's a headstone, I think most people are okay with taking care of it.
Respect.
And I know, like, online memorials, I created one for my sister-in-law, and she was very specific on things. So just personally, I follow what they asked for, what they wanted. And when I had a sister that passed away in a car accident, and she never wrote it. Well, we knew exactly what she wanted, and we just followed that. So, any other questions? Well, I hope everybody will give this a shot. Go out and talk about
Awesome.
it. It's
very interesting,
addictive. Once you get out there and try it once, and you'll see what I mean. So, all right.
Thank
Thank
you
you
so
very
much.
much.
Awesome.